people have been able to withstand the brutal U.S. economic war because of these claps, because of men like Alex Saab, because of the efforts that people have gone towards to overcome the sanctions imposed by the U.S. Treasury Department, by the Biden administration, and also by Congress. Sanctions that are designed to cause desperation and hunger in the people in the hopes that somehow Venezuela will overthrow its own government and install a government friendly to the U.S. This hasn't happened, of course, and it hasn't happened despite the fact that the U.S. tried to install a parallel government, a puppet government led by Juan Guaido. Alex Saab was on his way to Iran from Venezuela to broker a trade deal for fuel, food, and medicine. I don't know if you'll remember, this year and last year there were Iranian tankers that made their way over to Venezuela. This was thanks to Alex Saab, his efforts. But in June 2020, as he was on his way to Iran, his plane had to stop to refuel in Cape Verde. And actually, supposedly, he was denied, and his plane was denied entry into several other West African countries who received pressure from the U.S. So he landed in Cape Verde to refuel his plane, and he was immediately arrested by the Cape Verde authorities. It was only a day later that Interpol issued a red notice for Alex Saab's arrest, meaning that he was arrested without a warrant. Alex Saab was then held in solitary confinement for months. He was tortured. He claims to have been tortured by U.S. agents who beat him, demanding that he sign the extradition papers, demanding that he turn on the Maduro government. The Economic Court of West African States, ECOWAS, issued a binding ruling saying that Alex Saab not only shouldn't be extradited, he should be immediately released, and he should be given $200,000 as compensation for what he endured. The African Bar Association made a similar declaration. Several UN Special Rapporteurs, the UN Human Rights Committee, and the UN Working Group have also denounced the extradition of Saab. This was before he was extradited. They were denouncing the possible extradition of Saab. And then Saab was somehow extradited on October 16th without the knowledge of his family, without the knowledge of his lawyers. And it was very curious timing, because on October 17th, Cape Verde had elections, and the winner of those elections had already said that they were going to release Alex Saab. So the US DOJ, they knew that they basically had no time left to ensure that they would capture Alex Saab. And so they kidnapped him, basically. That's what his own wife has denounced, that Alex Saab was kidnapped. He was taken from his jail, the house arrest, and flown to the US, and his lawyers weren't even informed. Now, what does this have to do with the ongoing dialogue in Venezuela? Well, it has to do a lot with it. Because back in September, Alex Saab was named to the Venezuelan government's negotiating team. As folks know, the Venezuelan government and the extreme right-wing opposition have been holding talks in Mexico since August. Talks aimed at, basically a national accord for elections, for ending the economic war, for learning how to live in peace and stopping this whole craziness of coups, attempted coups, black ops, and other attacks that Venezuela has suffered over the years. The U.S. knew that extraditing Alex Saab would basically end these negotiations. And they told the opposition that they would not do anything against Saab. And yet they did it, they extradited him anyway. Not only that, but last month, the IMF blocked Venezuela from accessing $5 billion in what are known as special drawing rights. And when I say the IMF blocked it, it wasn't the IMF, it was the Treasury Department. So the Biden administration sanctioned Venezuela for $5 billion, and then they extradited Alex Saab, who is basically considered a hero in Venezuela for helping to feed the people in the face of the brutal economic war being waged on them. We're out here in front of the DOJ. We're going to attempt to present them with a petition that I think has maybe 3,500 signatures, all calling for the immediate release of Alex Saab. He's the newest political prisoner in the U.S. This is an attempt to basically to intimidate anyone that might want to work with a sanctioned country. Because that's the other angle here. It's not just about Venezuela. It's about every country that's under sanctions and every country that tries to work a way around sanctions. This is basically a notice, putting the business community on notice to say that if you work with a sanctioned country, the U.S. is going to come after you, and they're going to trump up charges. And it doesn't matter what the truth is. It doesn't matter what international law calls for. The U.S. is going to come after you. The U.S. has violated Alex Saab's diplomatic immunity. He's a diplomat. He shouldn't have been under arrest in the first place. He should not have been extradited in the first place. They violated his immunity, just like they violated diplomatic immunity in London, with Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy when they tried to assassinate him, when they surveilled him constantly. Just like they violated diplomatic immunity a couple miles west of here at the Venezuelan embassy in 2019 when U.S. agents entered without permission and they seized that embassy and they gave it to their puppet president. So this whole thing stinks. The case stinks. I mean, there's no reason why we should believe that the charges against Alex Saab, which relate to so-called corruption in this housing program, we have no reason to believe those are true. First of all, a Swiss court had investigated Alex Saab for 3 years and they found nothing. They dropped the investigation. In Venezuela, the National Assembly, when it was controlled by Juan Guaido, they investigated Alex Saab and they exonerated him. And because this result was not what Juan Guaido wanted, he immediately went after the National Assembly members that were part of the opposition. These are his allies. He went after them and denounced them of corruption because they didn't rule how the U.S. and Juan Guaido wanted them to rule. So it's a joke to think that the U.S. has Venezuela's interests at heart here, which is how they're trying to spin this Alex Saab case. They say it's to end corruption in Venezuela. Well, that's a total joke, because you know why? Right now there are 6 Citgo oil executives who are in jail in Venezuela. These are all Venezuelan citizens. 5 of them have dual citizenship with the U.S. Another one has a green card. They're always portrayed in the media as being Americans to make you think that, oh, Venezuela kidnapped 6 Americans. No, these are Venezuelan Americans who are in jail facing very serious corruption charges from the oil industry. But the U.S., instead of collaborating with this investigation, is demanding their immediate release. And actually, President Maduro, earlier this year, he granted them house arrest as a goodwill gesture for these talks, as a goodwill gesture towards the Biden administration. But as soon as Saab was extradited, those 6 executives went back into jail. And we can't possibly believe that this is about corruption because the most corrupt person, perhaps in Venezuela's history, is currently free in Italy. I'm talking about Rafael Ramirez, the former oil minister. Venezuela has sought his extradition for years, and NATO ally Italy keeps denying it. This guy basically oversaw a massive decline in the oil industry that Venezuela is still suffering from today, and we can't get justice for him in Venezuela because his extradition is being blocked. But for Alex Saab, who helped build houses, for Alex Saab, who helped feed people to overcome a brutal hybrid war, well, there's no justice for him. He gets to rot in an American jail. He gets to be tortured, while other corrupt criminals enjoy the full support of the United States, like Juan Guaido, whose corruption goes way deep. I'm glad Anya's here. I'm going to ask her to talk about this corruption in a bit. But we're standing here in front of the DOJ demanding freedom for Alex Saab. Free Alex Saab!
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 Anya, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you. Thanks, Leo, for holding it down. Always bringing so much information and the key points about the injustice that is faced right now by Alex Saab. Yesterday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, I don't know if you brought this up, made a statement about the Saab case while in Colombia, Venezuela's neighbor and essentially the base of destabilization operations where the United States uses paramilitary groups and the Colombian government to wage an actual dirty war on Venezuela. We saw that with the mercenaries, the Bay of Piglets catastrophe, disaster, embarrassment that took place last year. All of those paramilitaries trained by a former U.S. mercenary were camped out in Colombia. So, of course, the Venezuelan government is on notice when it sees Antony Blinken in the region and in Colombia that new plots may be underway in order to undermine their country, especially as these elections approach. But Blinken was asked about Saab, and he said that this is a case that's been going on for years. We're not really involved politically, and he just brushed the question aside, which is complete bogus coming from someone who apparently considers themselves to be a diplomat. Because the nature of Alex Saab's case is political. As Leo pointed out, he's a diplomat. It is illegal under international law to arrest him. And yet Blinken claims, oh, this isn't a political case, when he as a diplomat should be outraged and denouncing this abuse of international law and this violation of diplomatic norms. Again, as Leo pointed out, considering what the United States did with the embassy just a few miles away and considering what it continues to do, pressuring countries at the OAS where they flouted their charter in order to recognize the Guaido officials, he should be embarrassed, honestly, to represent the United States as a diplomat unless he's going to right these wrongs. But just a few hours after Blinken gave this address, the Justice Department, the people who work in this very building, announced 5 more individuals were charged. They charged 5 more people involved in the CLAP program with their usual scheme that they roll out. They say it's money laundering. They say it's corruption. Because apparently if you violate U.S. unilateral coercive measures, which are illegal under international law, you can be arrested and kidnapped, such as Saab, and you can be charged, such as these 5 other individuals, simply for, again, trying to procure products to supply the monthly CLAP delivery boxes. And I can speak about the impact of the CLAP program because I've witnessed it firsthand. I've, over the last 2 years, spent 3 months in Venezuela, 1 month at a time, stayed with friends, and seen these CLAP box deliveries. I've seen the products that Saab and others have helped secure. Corn flour from Turkey, rice, oil, pasta, goods that these families use to survive thanks to the work of Saab and others. I was there around Christmas last year, and my friend's family was really excited that that their family, but everyone in the neighborhood and anyone who received CLAP was also going to get a Christmas ham special as part of the CLAP program. So you can imagine that kind of program here. That's the thing. You hear the United States government and its allies denounce the CLAP program and claim that it's a way of bribing the citizens of Venezuela into supporting the government. Well, 2 things there. First of all, the opposition is allowed to participate and receive CLAP programs, participate in and receive CLAP boxes and the benefits of the program regardless of political affiliation. But second of all, imagine if in the United States we heard that a political party, or actually the government, was bribing citizens to vote for them with food and housing. To me, that just sounds like a competent government. To me, that just sounds like a government that's actually providing services to its people. Instead, in the United States, right here at the Justice Department, you walk a block away and you run into people who are starving, people who are freezing in the winter, who do not have homes. You go to the State Department and there's like a tent city set up across the street from it, where who knows how many people are sleeping on a nightly basis, all right? We were at the OAS a few months ago and there was someone actually camped out under the bushes sleeping at the Organization of American States. What better symbol can you see of the disconnect between U.S. imperial policy, which is pillaging the rest of the world, and the suffering of our citizens here in the United States? So imagine if a government, instead of wasting its time charging people such as Saab and kidnapping them and torturing them, imagine if our government spent half that energy and money investing in our own people. It's just simply absurd to suggest that providing services to people is a form of political manipulation. It is simply what a government should do. And Alex Saab is helping his citizen or his population, the population in Venezuela, the government that he works for, to circumvent illegal U.S. sanctions which have led to starvation and suffering in Venezuela on a massive scale, and simply because the United States believes that its law is the law of the land, that he has the right or should be imprisoned and tortured. Well, if someone is trying to strangle you, is it assault if you push them away or if you move their hand off your neck and simply try to breathe? Because that's all the Venezuelan government is doing. That is all Saab is helping them do. I don't think anyone would look at that case, seeing someone with their boot on the neck or their arms around the neck of an individual and seeing that other person, the victim, fight back. I can't think of anyone or imagine that anyone would call that person the criminal or that person the one guilty of assault. And I just wanted to close by mentioning the fact that I was watching a statement delivered by Alex Saab by his wife, Camila, in Venezuela. And she was talking about how her family, as Leo mentioned, was not informed of the fact that he had been extradited to the United States. Neither had his lawyers been informed, which just seems like formal, normal legal process would have to be carried out there, and tell his lawyers that they're going to extradite their client. No, that didn't happen. But she said they only found out because his sister went to go visit him and saw that the normal amount of guards surrounding the house where he was under house arrest weren't there. And one of them simply told her they expedited the extradition. And so that's how his family found out that he was on a plane to Florida and that he would be facing trial imminently in the United States. And she said she took her 2 small daughters to the embassy in Cuba, the Cape Verdean embassy in Cuba, in order to get some recourse, in order to figure out what she could do to actually see her husband or get information on his case, and that the authorities there in the Cape Verdean embassy declared her and her family persona non grata. Gratae, I think, is the plural version if I remember my Latin declensions properly. But anyway, they kicked her out of the embassy, refused to provide her with any information, and she was crying while she was explaining this in Caracas, in Plaza Bolivar. And just as a new mother myself, I really empathize with her because I can't imagine being separated from the father of my children and my partner in that way, knowing also that he's being tortured and that her young daughters are being deprived of the right to see their father, to know their father. And while it is a beautiful thing to watch the Venezuelan people see him as a hero and rally behind him and support him and his family, the reality is these are precious years and precious days, hours that are being taken away from him, he's being robbed of the right to see his children grow up. And I just want to emphasize that because I think sometimes we forget that these are just humans too, these are people, and all of us and everybody walking by or anyone listening should really empathize with that on its own, regardless of the fact that he's even this broader hero to the Venezuelan people or to the struggle at large. So, free Alex Saab!
Free Alex Saab!
Free Alex Saab!
Free Alex Saab!
DOJ, we are here to put you on notice that there are citizens in the United States who reject your policies, who reject your extrajudicial behavior, your unilateral behavior, and your abuse of the law and your war against the Venezuelan people. We here also oppose it, and will continue to oppose it.
Thank you so much.
I didn't talk about their corruption.